Hey, Harford County. I'm Emily Adolph of The Soul Lift. You may remember me as a guest on Rich's podcast. Well, I'm back with something special.
And I'm Ona Crow. We're introducing Nourish and Connect, a gathering space designed to bring people together that feels authentic, supportive, and uplifting.
This is about real relationships, shared wisdom, and growth.
Our gatherings nourish with mindful experiences and reflective activities to leave you inspired.
And they're designed to connect with intentional conversations and welcoming community where you truly belong.
They're the second Wednesday of every month. Join us on April 9th at Doss Beer Hall in Bel Air from 5:30 to 7 p.m. to celebrate spring.
And mark your calendars for May 14th and June 11th. We have amazing experiences planned for summer.
Come as you are and let's grow together.
Hey everyone, it's Rich Bennett. Can you believe it? The show is turning 10 this year. I am so grateful for each and every one of you who've tuned in, shared an episode, or even joined the conversation over the years. You're the reason that this podcast has grown into what it is today. Together, we've shared laughs, tears, and moments that truly matter. So I want to thank you for being part of this journey. Let's make the next 10 years even better.
Coming to you from the Freedom Federal Credit Union Studios, Harford County Living presents Conversations with Rich Bennett.
Slow pitch or fast
It's probably the least sexy part of the work. It's okay. No. The truth is, this is Wendy, and I'm joined here with Rich. And
I'm co-hosting. It's Conversations with Wendy.
From Maryland Wellness. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And we're doing an episode today to talk about some of the things that they do in the mental health space.
Yes.
And you brought some guests with us. Do you guys want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Asha. I'm a PRP counselor with Maryland Wellness.
My name is Rob Watkins. I'm a rehab specialist with Maryland Wellness.
And my name is Leann Roderick. I'm a community relations coordinator with Maryland Wellness. So I'm the face of Maryland Wellness in Harford County.
Awesome. We had Leann on here before, but today with our guests, I think you're going to tell us a little bit more about the program and what it does for those in the county. Just Harford County?
So we actually have 7 offices throughout the state of Maryland.
Wow.
So we originated as the Baltimore area community health services in Baltimore in 2013, and since then have acquired some companies, expanded the company to became Maryland Wellness because we were no longer just in the Baltimore area. Harford County is one of our current expansion projects. I'm a Harford County resident. I've lived here my whole life. And like Wendy said, I was on the podcast before with another organization specifically around substance abuse. And what I was seeing when I worked in substance abuse is that there wasn't enough resources specifically for the substance abuse community in the mental health world. Mm-hmm. And so when I made the decision to kind of venture out and see what else was out there for me, I saw an opportunity to bring more mental health services to Harford County, and that was really important to me.
Why do you suppose that was? That there was, it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for a while, it's like the county was struggling to get the resources for recovery.
Right.
But you're saying that you had a lot of people or a lot of resources for recovery, but not a lot for mental health issues.
Right. And I do think the way that society has tackled these two issues are very different. Mm-hmm. But what I think the big push, especially I want to say after like around 2018 in the realm of substance abuse, was people were dying. Yeah. And they were dying at high numbers. Mm-hmm. And so, these terminologies were coming out at the time of like this global epidemic of substance abuse. And there had to be like almost a crisis response for that so that we could try to prevent these mass deaths across the entire nation. Whereas mental health, I wouldn't say that people aren't dying because they are. In fact, one of the big focuses in Harford County government right now is to lower our suicide rates.
Yes.
But it wasn't as much of a like crisis need as the community saw it. It's in like 2018 is the way I think it was.
Right.
happening.
Now, do you think that the visibility to that was brought more to light after COVID? Because we had a lot of mental health issues that were stemming from that time,
Yes.
you know, especially with our younger kids and school and anxiety and depression and all of that. So I'm wondering, is that where you guys just kind of decided that we need more services, or not just you guys, but in general because
Right.
of COVID?
I think that slowly there was like a push for mental health services the whole time. And like I said, I think that the awareness and the stigma around mental health, so stigma has been coming down in both senses,
Right.
SUD
Thank
and
God,
mental
yeah.
health. But it wasn't like this year there was this many deaths and this year it tripled to like 3-4 times that amount until after COVID. We did start seeing higher numbers of suicide and things like that. But I do think that was the need for mental health services, or the desire, I guess, for mental health services in the community has been steadily increasing over long periods of time. But Ralph's been a provider in the field longer than I have been working in the field, so I'd love to hear.
Yeah, and I
him
was
on
going
that,
to
too.
ask him, because you consider yourself, your title is a recovery.
So when we hear recovery, we want to
Okay.
think substance abuse.
Right.
And psychiatric recovery is it's an adjunct to therapy. If you're seeing a therapist, but there's a lot of things. And one of the things that I like to say is therapy works on feelings. PRP, or psychiatric rehabilitation, works on behaviors.
Partial hospitalization.
No.
Is that
psychiatric
no?
rehabilitation.
Well, you said PRP.
So PHP is partial hospitalization.
Okay, so what's PRP?
Psychiatric rehabilitation program.
Okay, thank you.
And it works on those behaviors. One of the things that I feel with COVID when it came, a lot of those feelings of isolation were exaggerated. I mean, were exasperated. They're
Yes.
worse. I mean, if you have a kid who struggles with communicating with people, they struggle with building relationships. Now we're going to not go to school. We're going to stay at home and we're going to homeschool. We're going to not engage in sports. We're not going to engage in activities outside. So if you've had some mental health issues, they're going to be worse. you
Yeah.
know?
Yes.
And PRP addresses that isolation people feel. We're encouraging, appropriate interactions in community, appropriate relationships. How many people have relationships with others, but they're really not healthy? You're really not, helping yourself.
So how do you tackle that? I mean, I'm just curious, like what type of program, like what do you do in that type of programming for that individual? I know it's probably specific to the individual as well, but there's got to be some kind of like first, second, third steps.
So the first step would be an assessment.
Okay.
Where we would, work out the issues the client's having, whether it's with managing coping skills, managing frustration, being able to pay your bills because you're too depressed.
Right.
Being able to, go to work.
Wanting to work.
Right, wanting to work. So we're doing that assessment and it's individualized, where we're, trying to identify the issues that client's having. With our policy is to do the assessment within 10 days.
Is the assessment like a test, or
It's
is
just
it a counseling session?
It's the counselor talking to the
Talking
client
with them,
and
yeah.
identifying, and everything is client steered. We're not going to sit here and impose what we think you need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
The client's going to have a say in how their treatment goes, as long as it's appropriate and safe.
Right, right.
So then within doing that assessment within 10 days, then we're going to put an individual rehabilitation plan together, and that will be done within 10 days of the assessment being done. We're going to go over the goals, with the client. What do they want to work on? Do they, work on improved interactions? Do they work on symptom management? Do they want to work on trying to get a job?
Right.
Trying to
Okay.
find a place to live. Then we're going to put that IRP together with the client.
IRP.
IRP, individual rehabilitation
Okay,
plan.
I always like
Yep.
to make it very clear that everyone understands what we're talking about, because sometimes I don't know.
Right.
The earth.
Yes, the IRP.
and you want to go and you want to use your little, acronyms or whatever, to It's an IRP, individual rehabilitation
Okay.
plan.
Well, all industries have their.
Yeah,
So
their-
I just like to make sure. Okay.
So then we use SMART goals. And a SMART goal is a goal that's measurable in quantity and in length of time. So we're going to work on a client. We're going to identify 3 things they struggle with in their symptom management. And we're going to work on that goal over 6 months. We're going to use a SMART goal because it's something measurable so we can see if the client's making progress.
Right.
And then once we've achieved that goal, if the client feels, you know what, I feel confident that that's not an issue anymore, then we're going to move on to another goal. A client has the right to review their IRP whenever they want. It's not just every 6 months. To reassess their goals so that it's, person-centered on what they want to work on.
Okay.
And there's such a variety of things that can be addressed in a PRP program. And so we kind of talked a little bit about like employment or symptom management. But it could be, and to kind of Ralph's point of the client choosing what they want to work on, clients don't always know therapeutically what that means.
Right.
But what they could identify is, I'm going to lose my housing if XYZ doesn't change. And so in the client's perspective, it's like, hey, help me find funding for said housing, or help me which we can help with that stuff. But that's where, therapeutically we come in, or the providers come in and say, okay, if your goal is we want to maintain housing, we need to figure out what behaviors led us to the point that we're losing our housing in the first place, and kind of setting almost
You're
back.
not fixing it for them. You're assessing how they got there.
And we might temporarily help them fix
Right.
it while we address the behavior that led to
You're
that
helping them
moment.
fix it themselves.
Correct.
Which is very important.
Do they usually come to you at a state where they are at a point of no return in certain situations? I mean, I would think that, there's a stigma there too.
Right. And so the intent of PRP is to keep people out of the hospitals. So to manage mental health symptoms so that they don't become hospitalized for that mental health. And so in order for a client to be eligible for PRP, they have to come with a clinical diagnosis from a therapist or a mental health
Qualifying
prescriber.
diagnosis.
Yes. And so for children, that can be any mental health diagnosis other than autism. They can have a diagnosis of autism. It can't be the reason they're being referred for that service. And for adults, there's a series that I'll let Ralph get into in a minute. But so essentially somebody with a clinical license or a psychiatric license is recommending this person to the service generally because
Okay.
they're at a
Right.
point where their
They
life
need some help.
some
Okay.
intervention.
Gotcha.
And with the children and getting approval for services, you have to show that their current mental health status affects their daily life.
Right.
That's the bar for, children and adolescents. For adults, you have category A and category B diagnosis. Category A would be schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, and
Anything involving
bipolar
delusional thought.
schizoaffective. Category B would be your bipolars without schizoaffective, traits or major depression.
What about trauma? Like, how does trauma fit into this? Because I know that a lot of times, like, let's just say COVID was traumatic. So you have somebody that's susceptible to anxiety and depression, genetically or
Right.
based on a situation. And so they have this traumatic event, and you see that they start to change in a decline, being able to function. Is that something that's also, it doesn't have to necessarily be like a specific mental health. It could be something that was facilitated by trauma or environment or that
For
type of
children
thing.
and adolescents, it could, but for
Okay.
adults, it's a pretty hard and fast rule. You have to have that,
Okay.
But trauma and depression go hand in hand.
Okay.
Right. And so when we talk about these diagnoses, so the category A that Ralph discussed, like those people, somebody with schizophrenia, it is kind of clinically understood, as Ralph has explained to me before, that they're probably always going to need some sort of support.
Right.
And so they're almost always like, once that diagnosis has been made, yes, we want to identify the reasons why PRP is necessary, but PRP is almost always going to be necessary. Versus the category B, bipolar and major depressive, those ones are not always going to qualify because, as we know with major depressive disorder, sometimes are worse than others, right? And so if somebody has depression, but for the most part, they're generally able to work. They're on medication. It seems to be working. That person is probably not likely going to qualify for PRP. Right. However, if we have somebody is suffering from major depressive disorder and they can't shower, they can't go to work, they're not socializing, because the mental health disorder is impacting their ability, like Ralph says, for daily living, then that person would qualify. And so when we come back to that trauma piece, like trauma itself is not going to diagnose or allow somebody to have the diagnosis for that. But if the symptoms of that trauma are one of these more kind of severe mental health qualifications, then they would.
Okay.
And the reality is, with a client with schizophrenia, we're not curing anyone. It's about maintaining
management,
their current level of care, as long as it's appropriate, as long as it's a healthy situation. If you have a client who's maybe hoarding food, or, I've had clients who will let their trash collect in their house, it becomes a safety issue. That's not, an appropriate level of care to maintain your life. So we're coming in to work with them to, basically keep them out of a more restrictive program or keep them out of the hospital.
Okay.
And so where that kind of links into the substance abuse world is, I can't tell you what I ran into when I was working in recovery housing was we would have clients with clear mental health, like a dual diagnosis situation, and it wouldn't be therapeutically safe based on their current behaviors to keep them in the house with these other clients that aren't exhibiting these same behaviors.
Yes.
And so, and I'm sure you've ran into that.
We have, yes.
And so we were running into the issue where it was, we didn't know where to send them. Like, short of hospitalization, we didn't know what to do. And so kind of intervening, having somebody, so that these recovery houses can handle somebody with a more severe mental health diagnosis like schizophrenia or some of these others, to kind of link them up with these dual services while they live in these settings. So Ralph said we can keep them in the safe living environment that they're in without jeopardizing the safety of other people in these living environments.
Okay, so do you guys, because I'm thinking about what you said with the hoarders especially, do you actually go to the people's homes as well?
Yes.
Really?
Yep. And that's where you find a lot about the person.
Right.
Being in their space, you look and you see that they are hoarding, or, some clients, they're anxious about checking their mail, so they don't check it at all.
Yeah.
And now you have bills piled up. And they don't really realize the correlation between their mental health and their behaviors. So like Ralph said, like we're like the foot soldiers.
Right.
To kind of connect the service between therapy and the behaviors they have to kind of help them work between those.
Okay.
That's great, because I know some people don't even like to go out of their house
Right.
or even let somebody in.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about COVID. If you have somebody who doesn't want to leave their house, who doesn't have appropriate interactions with anybody, who doesn't have community resources, let's do everything by teleservice. I mean, teleservice, don't get me wrong, it has expanded care for mental health. It has got people, medical treatment that, probably could not get out of the house as easy for transportation. Right. It's a great thing. But
still need that one-on-one in person.
You still need that one-on-one. You still need, if you're struggling with all these things of, I have problems interacting with people, well, now I've kind of been given the excuse to stay in my house and not do anything and compound the problem and make it worse.
Well, and not only that, especially when it comes to mental health, especially like with depression, if you're sitting with that person one-on-one and they're crying, sometimes people, we talked about this the other day, sometimes people just need a hug. You can't do that when you're looking at somebody on a screen.
No.
Right.
You know, and that can make a huge difference.
Right.
There's a certain level of detachment where, you can be on the other side of a screen and you're not really in a situation where you have to be truthful.
Well,
If there's
yes.
there's that border there, or
100%.
whatever barrier that you can only get so close.
Yeah.
Right.
I talk about that all the time, and I can't tell you how many clients I've had that are resistant to mental health treatment in general.
Yes.
And so they can tell, especially behind a screen, but even in person with a therapist, like I've been in therapy, I know how that works. They can essentially tell that provider whatever they want to tell that provider.
Right.
They can say that their house is great and nobody has a drinking problem and we have all this food in the cabinet and blah, blah, blah.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows
Nobody
if that's
knows.
true.
Yeah.
And having providers go in and be like, all right, can you just show me what your pantry looks like so that I can make sure that your kids
Is it like a
are fed?
wellness check?
It's a PRP service.
Okay.
You know, we can say session, we can say service. I mean, this has happened with me in the past 3 months. The fact that we're going to clients' houses, we're catching psychotic breaks.
What is
wow.
that? What,
And
what does that mean?
A client has, they've not slept, they haven't ate, they're, they're bipolar schizoaffective, they haven't eaten, they haven't slept. And the longer they go without sleeping, the more paranoid and irrational
the
they
symptoms
get, and the
become.
worse the symptoms get. If PRP wasn't going to the house, then that wouldn't have been caught, and that could have ended up in a way worse situation
Super
than it
dangerous.
was.
They could have been a statistic. Yeah, you don't want that.
Right.
In a bad way.
Right.
Right.
And it's a great thing to be everybody, I don't care who you are, you need someone in your life to say, this is your perception, but this is the reality.
Right.
And
Yes.
the ideal way that this works is you have a client and you build up a rapport with them. And I like to call it you build up and you save emotional currency with the client. So that the day comes where this client's really making some unsafe choices, I can say to the client, this is what you think, but this is what really is going on. And that's because I've developed a rapport and a therapeutic relationship with the client, and I built that emotional currency up that the day comes that I can spend it and say, maybe we need to go get you evaluated at the hospital, or maybe we need to go talk to your therapist. It's a great thing when it's done right.
Maybe
Yeah.
your meds
Yeah.
aren't working. We
Yeah.
need to have a conversation.
That's
with
a
your
level of
psychiatrist.
trust too. Now they trust you. You've been in
Well,
their
you're
life.
showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
It's one thing to call somebody, how you doing? But it's another thing to be there and
Yeah.
to show up when they need you.
Yeah, and I've seen that on the addiction side, where
Absolutely.
and like the intervention type of situation.
And another thing that I've, to kind of expand on that I've seen with PRP is, sometimes they need that extra handhold too. Where you can be in an appointment, like I said, whether it's telehealth or in person with a therapist or a psychiatrist, where it's like, hey, I think you would qualify for this thing with DSS, or you would really benefit from going to this food pantry and blah, blah, blah. Where PRP can have that more hands-holding, hands-on approach of like, we are going to go to DSS.
Right.
Right.
Collaborative
Yeah.
effort.
So that I can, one, hold you accountable to actually take this action. And two, then that person is also building up the confidence to do those things and make those strides with the assistance of somebody that has the time to do it with them.
Right.
How often do you, let's say, with one client, how often do you actually go and see them in person, or is it a case-by-case situation?
So at minimum for adults, we see them 6 times a month.
That's
Okay.
a lot.
Yeah.
That's good.
But if a client's in a
Client-
crisis, we're going to
Yeah.
be seeing them a lot more.
Right.
Yeah. So 6 is definitely a minimum.
Okay.
Okay.
You know,
And what is your role? Are you,
I'm a PRP counselor.
okay, and you are
Specialist.
specialist. What's the difference?
So I'm sorry.
Ralph's my boss.
My official designation is Certified Psychiatric Rehabilitation Practitioner.
Okay.
And then I'm also a Child and Family Resiliency Practitioner.
Okay. And
So I'm basically can work with families and kids or adults supervised.
okay. And then you're more of the hands-on.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so you're going into the house and
I
then
just
maybe
love the
reporting.
way Ashia
Yes.
explained that, Ralph's my boss.
That's the short answer.
Yeah, right.
So Ralph can hold
I
a
hate
caseload
boss. I
himself.
hate that.
Okay.
So
He's a good one, though.
yeah.
Never say that. You know what it's spelled backwards.
Yeah.
Can you say that again, please?
But yeah, so Ralph can hold a caseload as well. So if we have a specific, like a really difficult case, Ralph might hang on to that himself. Or, we have a large service area. So we have clients. So specifically this team here is the Harford County team. But we have clients in parts of Cecil County. We could have clients, essentially Ralph sees the clients kind of more in the Cecil County capacity too, right? If that would fall under
Yeah,
the
that would be me.
because of
So you two are
geographic location.
the Harford County team? There's no one else?
So if we were to build up a big enough PRP caseload, we would
Okay.
absolutely
Add. Okay,
more.
I was just curious.
So right now, this is what we have to handle the clients that we have.
Okay.
But obviously, we have the capacity to continue to grow.
Hopefully you won't have to.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's going to shrink.
No,
yet.
it's
not.
I think
It's
we
not.
need to expand, and then hopefully
Yeah.
we'll shrink. But
Well, go ahead.
So, and there's time periods during the year. I mean, it's you can look at graphs, and there's time periods during the year where your admissions go up.
Yeah.
like now, winter.
Like now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, season 7.
Yeah, so honestly, I see a
people.
dead zone right before the holidays. Nobody wants to seek treatment until
Yeah.
right after Christmas.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, January was, so part of my job is to track referrals. January was probably the most referrals I've gotten since I started working at Maryland Wellness.
And that falls right into it's after Christmas.
Right.
Right.
But also winter.
Even for those of us who don't struggle with mental health issues,
hard
this is
time of year.
we don't go outside. It gets dark early, and you kind of fall into this rut. So I can't even imagine how
Because
it
we're
affects
stuck
people.
inside and we're isolated from other people.
Yes. Yeah, and then the more you isolate, the more you want to isolate.
Right.
Yes.
So are you guys actually busier then, especially around the holidays? I mean, talking to the clients you have now, or is it that they're the ones that really are putting everything on hold?
Well, I
Because
mean,
I would think that's a very critical time.
if during, and you tell me what you think, during Christmas and January, it's a struggle.
Yeah.
Clients have things for holidays, and PRP should never be a burden. If PRP is a burden, then you don't need to be in it. If it's a burden, then we're doing our job wrong.
Right.
We need
like
to
that,
work
yeah.
with you to deliver services in a way that you want them
Right.
to be delivered.
Are there any clients that are referred to you by outside sources that make it mandatory, such as a drug court situation?
Yes, so I am
Okay.
actually on the panel for the circuit drug court in Harford County.
Okay.
Now, I will make this statement that PRP is not you guys didn't know what it was before you guys came here today. And
Right.
so most people aren't super familiar with PRP. And so a lot of my referrals for mental health come in the form of therapy and psychiatry, which we also provide. And so once somebody's in services with us, we can evaluate and say, this person has this diagnosis and we really think they would benefit from also being enrolled in PRP.
Right.
And so, yes, there are some courts that we work with, but a lot of them, the mandatory portion is therapy or psychiatry, and then we can recommend PRP from there.
And a lot of the guidance I had got from probation officers in the court orders was, client will participate in all recommended mental health treatment.
Gotcha.
Right.
What about eating disorders? Do you guys handle that at all?
So
I'm
we
just
don't-
curious because I don't know what the scope of your reach is.
we don't specifically touch eating disorders within Maryland Wellness. We do have because of the positivity of the virtual side of things is we don't have a waiting list for therapy right now, which is unheard of in the state of Maryland.
No waiting list.
No waiting list. But that's because we can sign somebody up for a virtual session with a provider in Cumberland or something of those nature.
As long as they're within the state of Maryland, is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, or they're licensed within the state.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So technically someone could be licensed in Maryland but live in North Carolina. But they have to be licensed within the state of Maryland.
Okay.
And so the reason I say that is because we have so many different providers seeing people all over the state. They have different specialties or different things they have a lot of experience in. So, you know, I get asked a lot, do we have anybody that specializes in OCD? And not necessarily, but we do have a handful of providers that have extensive experience working with people with OCD.
Gotcha.
And so they may not be in Harford County, but they would work with that provider wherever they are in the state. And then if we feel they're also therapeutically appropriate for PRP, we can link those two together. So we have the mental health, the clinician, and then the hands-on.
And when you're in PRP, you know, that eating disorder may not have come up until the PRP worker starts, you know, the counselor starts working. And then that's where PRP is going to, you know, collaborate with the therapist about what's going on and find the client a program.
Well, and the same could apply for substance abuse. We don't technically treat any substance abuse ourselves, but we work with several other programs.
So if you discover that this is happening for your client, then you have the...
We're always setting rehab up for
we sent a client to SUD treatment 2 weeks ago because they identified it as a need.
Right. Okay. Wow.
And that's the importance of like really getting in there with the clients, building that rapport, because sometimes they don't realize the effects of their mental health until we're in front of them face to face and, you know, seeing some of their behaviors.
Or even the differences between mental health and some of, I mean, they're all under the general umbrella of mental health, but, you know, we're talking about different providers that treat different aspects of it, right? And so I know when I worked in substance abuse, there would be things that were clearly in my eyes like, this isn't a substance abuse issue, whatever we're dealing with right now. But to convince them like, hey, we need you to see a different provider because the providers that we have aren't meeting the needs of your symptoms, right? Trying to explain to somebody the difference between a drug and alcohol counselor and a therapist sometimes is like pulling teeth. And so the same could be said to have somebody with that emotional currency as they talk about to be like, hey, you know, I know you have this diagnosis, but I'm also seeing this problem that you and I aren't addressing together. Yeah. And I think that we need to add another provider to this mix for you to get the care you need.
And are the patients or clients, I don't know which you call them, are they receptive to this?
For the most part.
Yeah. Okay.
For the most part.
Because I just know in the addiction world, when you're trying to, like, you know, get someone help, they're usually kicking and screaming.
Right.
But, you know what I mean? No.
And I think a lot of times that
in the mental health world, too, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
honestly.
A lot of times it's getting someone in the door. And we do run into that. I had some referrals recently to come in from Franklin Square. And they were explained like, hey, we think you need XYZ treatment. And when I talked to them, they were like, oh, well, I found housing through this substance abuse program, so I don't really need you guys anymore. I said, but you were referred for mental health help.
Right.
And they were like, well, I'm not interested in that.
And you can't make someone.
You can't make somebody.
And that's
the
one
unfortunate.
of the things PRP does is it works on entitlements. It helps a client, you know, we help clients navigate the entitlements. If you have a client who...
Can you explain what an entitlement is?
An entitlement would be like TDAP or SNAP or...
Which is the food, and what's TDAP? I know that
TDAP's
SNAP
temporary
is...
disability.
So it's financial.
Okay, gotcha.
Financial.
Okay.
You're listening to Conversations with Rich Bennett. We'll be right back. Ever been caught off guard by a sudden heat wave or cold front? We've all been there. That's why I'm excited about our sponsor for this episode, EcoCool HVAC. Veteran-owned and rooted in Harford County, EcoCool HVAC is your go-to solution for all things heating and cooling. Whether you're battling summer's heat or winter's chill, they've got you covered with their top-notch heating and air conditioning services, and even pool heating solutions. Stephen Crodell and his qualified team ensure rapid response and meticulous attention to detail. It's not just about providing a service. It's about caring for the community. Their motto, when you call, they care, and they're there. If you need professional, reliable HVAC assistance, dial EcoCool HVAC at 443-324-9714. Again, that's 443-324-9714, or visit ecocoolhvac.com. Again, that's ecocoolhvac.com. Here's to comfort all year round, thanks to EcoCool HVAC.
So, if you have a client who is exhibiting some pretty strong, symptoms of mental illness and can't work, we can advocate for the client with social services to get TDAP.
Okay.
Which is like a payment every 2 weeks. It's not a lot, but it's something to help.
Right.
It always, in the past, PRP always was about, one of the things we could do was help clients with housing. That's a struggle nowadays.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I remember one of the first, times we really experienced that. We had someone in our house that had mental health issues, and they actually had nowhere to go. And we had to work really, really, really hard, and it took months to get them out of the recovery housing, because obviously we didn't want them to just not have a roof over their head. But there wasn't very many options.
No.
And I don't think it's gotten better. And now with the affordable housing shortage within our county is one issue. Are you seeing that as well? Like, and what do you do when you can't house someone or help them?
You be honest with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you tell them, this is going to be a struggle. But, it's important to, if you're struggling, we are a mental health provider that works on entitlements. And yes, we have to work on housing, but we also have to work on what's going on with your poor symptom management that got you there.
Okay.
We're going to work on, simultaneous.
Okay.
I mean, we can sit here and try to cure the disease or the symptoms, but we're really not addressing the disease that caused the symptoms. So
it could come back at any time.
Right. And the thing that you want to do with your clients is, and we had a discussion about this, you want to work out a plan with your client that makes them feel like they're making progress and they're moving forward. Even if you're not seeing the results that you want right away, but if you still feel like you're moving forward, you've still got the energy to keep going.
Yes.
Right.
So.
I mean, and housing it's an issue.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
like
is.
you said. So a lot of these people were not even necessarily looking for mental health housing. We're looking for housing in general. So
Right.
when we talk about the affordable care issues, the waiting list for housing through HUD is like 8 years long. There is no funding anymore post-COVID. There was a lot of funding during like 2020, 2021, 2022 to like keep for rental assistance and keeping people in their homes. That funding doesn't exist anymore. And so like Ralph said, it's about there are people that will get referred to PRP or self-refer to PRP because they think that we're going to
be able to expedite that housing situation. Yeah.
And that's where Ralph says like the honesty piece of like, hey, I don't know how much we're going to be able to help.
Yeah.
But we can help you address, like you said, the behaviors that got us to this point.
Well, and if you're honest with them, they feel that, and I would think that in turn they're going to be honest with you.
Yes, but sometimes that honesty is, well, I just self-referred because I wanted help with this, and so I no longer want to participate in this program. And we, like was said, we can't force anybody.
Right. I've been honest with the clients and said this, we're struggling right now because, and I've had clients fire me, for not being able to achieve that. And I totally get it. I mean, this is a voluntary program.
Right.
The only expectation is you be in therapy at least once a month to work with PRP.
Yes. So there are so PRP is insurance funded program. So that's exciting.
Oh, wow.
But it's specifically through Medicaid. And so, in order to get Medicaid authorization to pay for PRP, a client has to be engaged in therapy services at least once a month.
Okay.
And that can be with us, that can be with someone else. If somebody has a therapist they absolutely love and they are just looking for PRP services, great. We can do that too. If somebody's like, I haven't been in mental health treatment for 10 years, I have no idea where to even start, awesome. We can also provide the therapy piece.
Okay.
Psychiatry is not necessary with PRP. However, a lot of times with these more severe diagnoses, people are on medication. Same can be said. They could be through someone else. It could be through us. So we have the ability to do
So
all
you are
three.
full service then?
Yes.
Okay.
We have the ability to do all three, but we do not require a client to be engaged. We have clients... They don't like to hear this part.
Cover your ears, everybody.
I have clients that just get referred to me from other PRPs that I link
Got a
up
real
with.
problem with that.
Yeah. That they just want to use us for therapy so that we can do their authorizations back. And so we are welcome to work with other organizations to kind of figure out what's best for that client.
Right.
We do accept, so we accept Medicaid for all three services. We do accept United Healthcare, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, and Aetna for therapy and psychiatry.
What about veterans benefits?
So we aren't in network with TRICARE at this time. I do believe that we are trying.
Right.
They're a little bit more difficult to work with. But it is on our list of priorities. I believe it's actually the next group of people we are trying to get in
This
network
is
with.
probably, I don't know if this is even part of the topic, but do you have to reapply for Medicaid every year? If you have Medicaid, do you have to reapply?
I think that is the rule
Or is it
now.
continuous?
So during COVID, it was just a general, you sign up, you got in.
Okay.
And then what we started seeing was about 2 years ago, I started getting clients who were getting notices in the mail. And you remember those days?
Yeah.
And the Medicaid was evaluating everybody, and I lost a lot.
I feel like that would be
of clients.
overwhelming too. You got people who aren't even opening their mail, and now
Yeah.
all of a sudden they don't have,
Coverage.
And that's,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things PRP can help with. It's one thing to sit there and tell a client, hey, you need to call social services, your insurance isn't. Come on.
they're not going to do it.
I mean, if you're struggling with somebody who has no energy
Right.
and focus, that's where PRP is going to go pick the client up. You're going to go to social services and work it out.
Gotcha.
Right.
And it gets done.
Absolutely. And, the only reason we don't accept private insurances for PRP is because the private insurances do not recognize PRP as a service they will pay for.
And it's
Yep.
crazy because
Yeah.
You know that
Yeah.
in SUD there's a housing component that could be paid by insurance that the privates also do not
Right.
recognize.
Yeah, and I think that's a failing, to be honest.
Yes,
Yep.
100%. And it's to say, so let's say one of the things we work on in PRP is helping somebody find and maintain employment and what that looks like, and the pieces to that. All the behaviors that go along with that, like, hey, you have to take care of your hygiene, you have to be able to socialize. Why do you get aggressive with bosses when they say things you don't
a big
like?
one.
Like these kinds of different
Right.
behaviors, right? But let's say we do help somebody on that front and they get a job that pays well enough that they lose Medicaid.
Right.
Now we can't treat them on
Right.
the PRP
Continue
front
to
any
treat-
longer.
And it's maddening to me. I got an email about it today where a client said, "Well, I got a job. I don't think that I need services anymore." That's the exact time when you need services.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's watch these
Your
behaviors
stress
in
level,
action.
and your stress level's going up, so
Right.
you're going to have more emotions.
You
you're
have to
gonna
get up
more
on time
symptoms.
now before you didn't.
Yes.
You have to go to work. You have to show up. You have to.
Are you eating while you're there? Did you make
Yeah.
lunch? How are you making that happen? Like, there's so many components of it.
Now
Yeah.
that you're making money, how are you budgeting? and
Yes.
everything?
I mean,
Yeah.
self-care. I mean,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if somebody is successful in PRP, they will lose that service sometimes
Right.
because
Right.
of the
wow.
Medicaid
I
nature.
don't know. I don't even know how you can how we can figure all this out, to be honest, to change
Yes,
it. Like, what do you do to
absolutely.
change it for the client so they have that? Like, it's just not really an option right now.
Right.
I have two questions for all of you,
Okay.
and we'll start facing you this way. First question is, how long have you been in the field and why?
So I've been in the field for about 6 years. I started off in the field actually during COVID. And I was working at a facility, and I was small caseload, but I was doing a lot of the admin work. Mm-hmm. And I saw like the work that people were passing in, and it just wasn't sufficient. So for me, the big connection was the disconnect in service for an underserved community during a time where they needed it the most, you know? So that's what kept me going. Just really being in there, seeing the clients. And when I first talked to Ralph, he told me how big the company was, you know, just in making sure that we are seeing the people, not just doing telehealth. Right. And that's how I believe the best services are rendered. So that was for me the big connection.
Yeah, I like that.
I've been in mental health 30 years, 92.
So you started when you were 10?
I started when I was 22. Inpatient. I started out doing inpatient. In Virginia, they have temporary detention orders, and it was a locked unit where they brought people who had been TDO'd. So
what's TDO'd?
A temporary detention order for psychiatric condition, I got addicted to the crisis and the working trying to help people, and
that's a good addiction to have.
It's a good addiction to have.
You can get burnt out though.
You can get burned out.
Yeah.
Well, I did get burned out. So I was lucky enough to get into the Department of Mental Health in Virginia, and worked at like a teaching hospital.
Okay.
So I was able to move up that way. I took a 5-year break and did criminal justice casework for juveniles and violent teen offenders in PA.
Wow.
And that made me want to go back to mental health as quick as possible.
I would imagine that has something to do with mental health as well.
Yeah. But I mean, all in all, I PRP works, and when it's done right, it works, and I love my job.
And what are your credentials, if I can ask? Like, what do you need to do your job? Like, is it a BA? Is it a certification? Is it?
So we don't have to have any credentials for my position.
Okay.
Just, I believe, 1 year of experience.
Is that
a requirement?
1 year of experience, but also counselors are doing every 2 weeks supervision with the rehab specialist, going over treatment, going over recommendations, So everything is steered and focused.
Okay.
They are trained during their intake period and early on in their jobs with us to do all of the assessments, all of those pieces for the PRP part as well. So
you got to answer yet. You didn't answer my question.
I jumped in there.
I know you did. I wasn't going to say anything.
I'm sorry.
So I guess mental health, I've only been specifically in this field for 2 years. But as I stated, I've been working with substance abuse and mental health for 8 years. I'm a person in long-term recovery, which is how I got into the substance abuse world. And then, as I stated, a couple years ago, it was a time for me to kind of grow in my career and advance, and I didn't really know what direction I wanted to go in. I was very open-minded. I went from, applying to, labor jobs to all over the place. And, like I said, I saw an ad for Maryland Wellness in Harford County, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. But I applied for it, and I learned I didn't know what PRP was when I applied.
Oh, wow.
I knew that I worked with people, and there was not enough mental health treatment in Harford County. That's what I knew.
Right.
And so it was really a great opportunity to bring, like I said, a whole nother realm of services to the area. There are other providers in the area, and I still didn't know what it was. And so I think one of the things that I'm really passionate about in the mental health front is making sure our community knows, one, who Maryland Wellness is and what we provide.
Actually, what's the website?
It's mdwellness.org.
Okay.
Super easy. But so much so that I try to make it a point to go to community events. I beg our company to sponsor where we can. will be at the
yeah,
Rage
I was
Walk.
gonna say. Oh, thank you. And also, there is an event coming up.
Yes. So we hosted an event last June called Bayside Family Wellness. It was in Havre de Grace. It was awesome. We partnered with Rage Against Addiction. We partnered with the Clubhouse by Ashley. A couple other Chrysanthemums was brand new. They also participated in that event. We had some great vendors from the Sheriff's Department and Harford County Crisis Response come out. And so this year we are planning that event again. We were asked by Harford County Office of Drug Control Policy if they can help and support with that this year too. So that's really awesome. We're going to hopefully get a further reach with that information. It's completely free. We'll have like a bounce house and some activities for the kids and a lot of resources.
No, I didn't get a chance to go last year, but you have vendors.
In the bounce house?
No, yeah, well, I didn't. So you have vendors such as?
So there are resource tables for people to get more information on various wellness topics.
Okay.
So, if somebody needs a substance abuse resource, we want to have tables out there for that. Mental health resources, obviously. This year we think we're going to invite the YMCA, the We Rock the Spectrum, My Gym. These are some people that we've thought about asking to join us because we want there to be a variety of resources. Like I said, Harford Crisis Response was there last year, the Sheriff's Department, Nature Works.
Okay.
And we're open-minded to people that want to participate.
This is good. You have to be.
Yeah, if you want to participate, we want to make sure that the community knows you're out there. And like I said, it's a completely free event for the community. And so we're really prioritizing, like I said, what I'm passionate about, which is making sure people know that there is mental health help in this community. Because I don't know that everybody knows that.
They don't.
So
They don't know. I only have one more question for y'all, and then I'll shut up. You don't have to use names, but can each of you share a feel-good story with the listeners about a client that you've helped out?
Oh, yes. So I've had a client, and I would say this was towards the end of COVID. Well, let me share a more recent success story.
Okay.
That I've had. So I have a client.
Ralph's like, don't take mine.
Well, look how she lit up.
So I've had a client who she didn't really understand the rim of her problems, but just building that consistent rapport with this client, just like Ralph said, gave me a level of emotional currency where I could kind of step in and say, listen, like you said, this is what you think, but this is the reality of the situation. Right. But having a client who, one day is just not interested anymore. Done, delete my phone number, don't talk to me anymore.
Wow.
Done with you. But just understanding that meeting the clients where they're at, these times are going to come.
Yeah.
They're going to have days where they don't want to be bothered. And it's not a personal thing. But being able to understand that and then give that client time and then to, come back in just to check on them.
Right.
And then it's like, well, I kind of do need you, I want to work on this. But for me, having a client being able to recognize that they still need the help, even when they don't want the help, is like a full circle moment. Because then that way, the rapport is there. You are getting somewhere because now you understand that you do need the help.
Right.
And that's what we're here for. So for me, that was a pretty proud moment.
So I have a client who isolates in the house. He's late 20s, never worked, pretty much just stayed at home. It was just him and his mom and his sister, and mom was like, I'm worried when I'm gone, what's going to happen to you?
Right.
So we put together a plan where we increased, community interaction. I'm a big advocate of making yourself therapeutically uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is if you don't want to be around large groups, let's chunk it and address this issue in pieces instead of trying to eat the whole cake at one time.
Okay.
And, we looked at, volunteering options. We looked at, things.
Was he willing to do
He
this?
was willing.
Okay.
He was willing, but he was one of those kind of guys where you had to pull him a little bit sometimes for that support. Not making anybody do something they don't want to do, but talk about the benefits. So he ended up getting a volunteer job at a nature center.
Oh, nice.
And Mom told me he's been driving himself to his volunteer job, and he had a license for years and didn't drive.
Wow.
So he's getting more out of his life. He's more fulfilled.
Right.
And I would get clients together and go to the art museum in Delaware Art Museum, and we talk about how does art express emotions? How is art a coping skill? How can you use art to tell somebody something when you can't tell them yourself? You look at a client and you wonder, are they getting the message? And he was getting everything. He just wasn't sharing it with me the way that I wanted him to, but he was making progress.
Yeah.
And I congratulate him for it.
Makes you feel really good too, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does actually.
Yeah. Which is probably the biggest reward you can get.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Leann.
So when I stepped away from my last job, I intentionally wanted to step into a role that was a little less client focused. I think I'm more of an administrator than a provider personally. My interaction with clients is generally pretty limited to when they first come into Maryland Wellness, getting them set up with services, unless Ralph needs me to argue with somebody in administration.
Do we need to take that out?
Yeah, I'm just kidding. Like I said, my priority kind of coming into this was to make sure people knew that we're here and we're involved. So we're actually in the process of opening an office in Havre de Grace as well, so we can do more in-person services besides just PRP, and potentially group services through PRP.
Oh, wow.
And so that office is going to be in the big brick medical building on Lewis Lane right off Route 40.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
By the high school.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And so I was just kind of going through and introducing myself to the other offices in there. And there's like gastrology office and a physical therapy office, and these people are looking at me like, lady, we're never going to refer to you ever. That's just where our lanes don't cross, right?
Right.
And
never say never.
Right. And so I went into this one office, and I knew it wasn't somebody that we were going to partner with long term. It just, the services weren't the same. It was a completely different type of medical organization. And I was like, hey, I just want to introduce myself and let you know who we are, what we're doing. We're going to be in this office over here. And the woman at the desk goes, I don't know that we will ever be able to refer to you, but I'm currently looking for a new therapist, and you just walked in here today and gave me your card.
Wow.
And she signed up for therapy the next day.
Bam.
Awesome.
Wow.
So, we're making a difference where we can.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and
good.
and mental health services are tough. I mean, addiction services are tough as well, but people don't want to talk about what's going on with them in the mental health space.
Well, and the courage it takes sometimes just to take that first step. And so with her specifically, I think it kind of was a matter of, she was still working up the courage to either call the insurance company
And
see
there you
who she
were.
could, and blah blah blah. And
Right.
there it
You were in
was.
the right place at the right
Right.
time.
well, and that's why this event is a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah, because people, you're just kind of walking around and you might stumble upon something that is going to fit your need.
Absolutely. So.
I
I
think
said I only had 2 questions.
well, that's awesome. Do you guys have anything else you want to share with us about?
I think that really covers everything. We're very grateful for the opportunity to talk about our services and to...
Stomach's talking too.
Yes. I mean, we started this all off with we're hungry. So,
That was
Weird
Wendy's fault.
podcast, right?
so yeah, we're just very grateful for you guys having us and allowing us to talk about this in a, in a space where we can inform people more about it. I said stigma is going down at the beginning, but it's not going down fast enough, and we just really need more opportunities to talk about.
Well, and
these
I
things.
also, I know we probably didn't touch on this, but people don't want to, it's very personal. What's happening to them is so personal that it's hard to connect. So, and also they're afraid that someone's going to judge them. And so, having it more out there is so important, but I just don't know how to make people feel comfortable asking for help.
Right. Absolutely.
Because in your one situation, you had, like, they were referred by the mom, hey, this seems problematic to me. And I imagine that's not uncommon.
Oh, no, it's not.
Yeah.
No.
100%. And yeah, I mean, it's a willingness too. I can't tell you how many moms I've had reach out to me. They have an adult child, and then I reach out to the adult child, and they're like, "No,
right?
Yeah,
exactly. That's not uncommon.
Well, here's
at all.
my number. Call me if you change your mind."
You got to break that barrier too. With I would say, especially the ones that were still in high school during COVID.
Yeah,
or that social
or even younger.
activity was
Honestly,
they don't want to deal with anybody in person.
I have a teenage
You got to get rid of that
stepson.
barrier somehow.
I mean, I'm a person in long-term recovery. I recognize behaviors early, and it's not the same behaviors I had.
Yes.
It's something that I was like, hey, I feel like we should address this.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, we're going to have you just, like, talk to somebody. And he's a teenager now, so he was in middle school during COVID. He was like, I don't really understand why I need to do that.
Let me ask you a question, because this has come up before. Is it true that a minor, does not have to engage after the age of 12? Like, you cannot make someone get mental health services after the age of 12. So even as a parent, you think you have that window of opportunity, because a lot of times that doesn't even start until they're like pre-teen kind of.
But look at it this way. If you have somebody who's 13 who you feel needs to see a therapist, and you coerce and consequence a kid to go see a therapist, what are you really achieving?
I guess.
There are ways, and he doesn't live in this county, so we kind of went about it. But there are ways. So, like, essentially, he sees this provider through school. And so kind of the draw was like, hey, once every couple weeks, take 45 minutes out of class and go see this guy and just talk to him. And he was like, I'd love 45 minutes out of class.
Right.
Sure.
Okay.
Well,
that was easy.
So he is seeing a therapist now, but he didn't want to. He didn't understand why we were asking him to do that,
Right.
I mean, the most important thing is buy-in. Everybody's got to buy in on this, or we're not going to make
How do you make
progress.
someone buy in? And we can end on that, because that's going to probably be.
And that's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
How do you get somebody to buy in? And the best that I've seen is including them in the way treatment looks.
Person-centered. I think that's it. Letting them be in control of where they want to go. So we know where they're at, letting them be in control of where they want to go. And while we're getting there, just educating them.
Okay.
And I think something I see a lot in the SUD world is language is a big thing. And so allowing kind of a person in long-term recovery to decide how they want to explain that to people, right?
Yes.
Because the word addict is very triggering for some people, and there's other language. And so for some people, I have a coworker, and she's fantastic at this, and she doesn't necessarily advertise our services as mental health services. She'll more advertise them as, like, learning to live services, or how to excel
Which
at
is
life
awesome,
services.
because I feel like there's this group of adolescents that from like, I don't know, like 15 to 24, and I'm just making these numbers up just from my own personal experience, that don't know how to live at all, even though they have great families and all kinds of stuff.
I spent my morning fighting with an insurance provider, and I'm 30, and I'm like, man, this is so obnoxious. I don't want to do this at all. Can I just ignore it? And so just having that, like, willpower to do these life things, these obnoxious things.
Yes.
And obviously, like, that is kind of the whole big draw with PRP is we're going to teach you how to live effectively. But that could be said for all mental health services. And that's why I like that she explains it like that, and I try to sometimes too, is like, yes, you're seeing somebody with a license that is essentially, but at the end of the day, what does that hurt if they're helping you get through some of these struggles in life, and to try to get people to buy in that way.
And one thing I wanted to say about that, with kids and adolescents, I see this a lot where I have a kid who goes through school all day, no issues, no problems. As soon as they come home, they crash out. And a lot of times, maybe it's just the counselor needs to come in the house and work with the parents on structure in the house. Because structure and boundaries make a child safe.
Yes.
They make them feel safe.
And they make them learn how to live.
Yeah, and that's usually where you get the resistance. The parents trying to instill these boundaries, and then you have the child who is, oppositional and doesn't want to, and then it just becomes like this power struggle.
Right.
And parents have a tendency to consequence themselves into a corner where I've taken everything away from this kid that I can, and now the kid's just like,
Right.
what else are we going to do?
Right.
So we need to start working on ways to help parents learn to help a child earn things back.
And motivate them
Right.
to learn these things rather than consequence them into learning. Positive reinforcement.
Okay. Well, I think this is really educational.
Well, yeah.
Well, we don't talk about mental health like we should, and I feel like this is a really good way to have a conversation with the counselors and just kind of getting that perspective, because it's so incredibly scary. But what you're trying to do is you're just trying to come in and assess and say, hey, let's do it this way, or let me show you how this is like I like what you said about their reality versus, what did you say, like what you perceive it to be
Their
versus
perspective
what.
versus their reality.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think that's huge.
Absolutely.
The door's open anytime y'all want to come back.
Well, thank
you.
Yeah, we got to do another roundtable discussion on this. I mean, technically this is, but with people from other resources as well.
Yeah.
Get everybody to work together.
Very open to that.
So,
Yeah.
Okay, sounds great.
go ahead, wrap it up.
Okay, well, thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Conversations with Rich Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned something from it as I did. If you'd like to hear more conversations like this, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you have a moment, I'd love it if you could leave a review. It helps us reach more listeners and share more incredible stories. Don't forget to connect with us on social media or visit our website at conversationswithrichbennett.com for updates, giveaways, and more. Until next time, take care, be kind, and keep the conversations going.